Dr. Kim Ji-won wiped sweat from her forehead as she calibrated the quantum scanner for the third time that morning. The research vessel, New Seoul, had been drifting through the Kepler 442 system for 2 weeks, following energy signatures that shouldn't exist in this dead corner of space. The crew was getting restless, and their food supplies were running lower than she'd like to admit. "Still nothing but space junk out there," muttered engineer Ryu Jinsu as he floated past her workstation. The artificial gravity in this section had been acting up again, making everyone queasy. Ji-won ignored his complaint and focused on the readings scrolling across her screen. Something was definitely out there, hidden beneath layers of cosmic debris that had been accumulating for millions of years. The bridge comm crackled to life. "All hands, we're approaching the source of the anomaly," announced Commander Park Min-ho. His voice carried the exhaustion they all felt after months of chasing phantom signals across the outer rim. "Prepare for detailed scanning procedures, Lieutenant." Lee Hanna hunched over her sensor array, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. The young officer had joined their expedition fresh from the academy, full of enthusiasm about discovering ancient alien ruins. That excitement had faded after weeks of finding nothing but asteroids and space dust. But now, as new data flooded her screens, her eyes widened with disbelief. "Commander Park Min-ho, you need to see this," she called out, her voice shaking with excitement. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Everyone turned toward her station, as impossible readings filled the main display. What they had assumed was a lifeless planetoid revealed itself as something far more extraordinary. Beneath kilometers of accumulated cosmic debris lay geometric structures of staggering size. The scanning beams penetrated deeper, revealing corridors and chambers that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. This wasn't a planet at all, but something constructed by intelligent beings long ago. "How big is this thing?" whispered Dr. Choi Dae-ho as he studied the structural analysis. The xenoarchaeologist had spent his career studying ancient ruins across the galaxy, but nothing compared to this discovery. "It's larger than our moon back home." Commander Park Min-ho ordered the ship closer, despite the nervous protests from his navigation officer. The New Seoul maneuvered through floating debris, its hull groaning under the stress of gravitational anomalies surrounding the massive structure. Emergency lights flickered as power systems struggled to compensate for the strange energy fields emanating from whatever lay buried below. Ji-won suited up for the first exploration team, her heart racing with anticipation. This could be the discovery that changed everything humanity understood about their place in the galaxy. As their shuttle descended toward the surface, cutting through layers of accumulated space dust with plasma torches, the true scale of their find became apparent. The hull that emerged from their excavation gleamed with an otherworldly metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. But what made Ji-won gasp inside her helmet were the symbols etched into the surface. The markings covered vast sections of the hull, each one precisely carved despite the structure's incredible age. "These symbols," she breathed into her calm system, "they're not like anything in our xenoarchaeological databases." Yet something about them nagged at her memory, as if she'd seen similar patterns somewhere before. Dr. Choi Dae-ho rappelled down beside her, his scanner already working overtime. "The metal composition is impossible," he reported. "It's not on any periodic table I know. Whatever built this had technology far beyond current galactic civilizations." Their exploration continued for hours as they mapped the exposed sections of hull. The symbols seemed to tell a story, depicting star charts and what appeared to be battle formations. Some showed creatures that resembled no known alien species, while others displayed technology that looked almost familiar. "Be careful with that." "A deep core scanner," warned Ji-won as Dae-ho aimed the device at what appeared to be an access port. "We don't know if this thing has any active systems," but it was too late. The scanner's quantum beam interfaced with something inside the hull, and suddenly the ancient structure responded. A low vibration thrummed through the metal beneath their feet, growing stronger with each passing second. Emergency lights began, flickering along the hull's surface, casting eerie shadows across the symbol-covered exterior. "Everyone back to the shuttle now." Commander Park Min-ho's voice crackled through their comm systems as warning alarms echoed from the New Seoul. The massive structure was coming alive after eons of silence. G1 watched in amazement and terror as sections of the hull began to glow with internal energy. The symbols pulsed with rhythmic light, and somewhere deep within the structure, massive, systems were powering up. Then, without warning, a signal burst forth from the awakening giant. The transmission shot across space faster than their instruments could track, reaching into the depths of the galaxy with a message that would change everything. As rescue shuttles rushed to evacuate the exploration team, none of them realized they had just awakened something that had been waiting in the darkness for millions of years. The galaxy would never be the same again. The signal raced through space at impossible speeds, cutting through the fabric of reality itself like a knife through silk. On the bridge of the Earth Defense Station orbiting Luna, Captain Yun Jihye was enjoying her morning coffee when every communication array in the solar system suddenly lit up like a festival of lights. "Captain, we're receiving reports from across the galaxy," her communications officer called out, his voice filled with panic. Something big is happening everywhere at once. Jihye set down her coffee and rushed to the main display screen. Data streams poured in from human colonies, trading posts, and exploration vessels scattered throughout known space. The reports were all saying the same impossible thing. Massive structures were emerging from places where nothing should exist. On Kepler 186, a mining operation reported that their asteroid had split open like an egg, revealing a colossal ship that dwarfed their entire fleet. Near the Proxima Centauri system, colonists watched in terror as one of their moons cracked apart, exposing a vessel so large it had its own gravitational field. From the outer rim territories came even stranger reports of ships rising from planetary cores breaking through solid rock as if it were paper. "How many are we talking about?" Jihye asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Dozens, Captain, maybe more. Every few minutes, another one awakens." The bridge fell silent, except for the constant chatter of incoming transmissions. Each report painted the same picture: ancient vessels of incredible size emerging from hiding places throughout the galaxy. What terrified everyone was that these weren't random awakenings. They were coordinated, as if responding to a single command. Lieutenant Park Soo-yeon worked frantically at her analysis station, comparing the incoming data with their databases. "Captain, look at this," she said, projecting a series of images onto the main screen. Each showed the same symbol etched into the hulls of the emerging ships, the same marking that Dr. Kim Ji-won had discovered in the Kepler 442 system. The symbol was unlike anything in their xenoarchaeological records, yet it appeared on every single vessel. These weren't random discoveries, but parts of something much larger and more organized than anyone had imagined. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the major powers were scrambling to understand what was happening. In the war fleets of the Vorthak Empire, Admiral Krexvar studied tactical displays showing the emergent sites. The reptilian commander had conquered dozens of star systems, but the sight of these awakening giants filled even his battle-hardened heart with dread. "These vessels predate our oldest records," his science officer reported through clicking mandibles. "They're millions of years old, yet their technology appears more advanced than our own. The Zephyrian Collective, a union of telepathic beings who communicated through shared consciousness, felt the awakening like a thunderclap in their collective mind. Their crystal ships gathered near the emerging vessels, trying to probe them with psychic energy, only to encounter mental shields stronger than anything they'd ever experienced. Even the machine intelligence known as the Nexus, whose robot fleets patrolled the galaxy's outer regions, found their advanced sensors unable to penetrate the hulls of these ancient ships. Their collective artificial consciousness processed millions of calculations per second, yet couldn't comprehend the technology they were witnessing. But it was Lieutenant Colonel Bae Junho, stationed at the Galactic Observation Post on Titan, who made the connection that changed everything. As he coordinated between various alien governments and human colonies, a pattern emerged in the data that made his blood run cold. "Captain Yoon," he transmitted to Earth Defense Station, "you need to see this analysis. I've been comparing the symbol on these ships with fragments from human archaeological sites across our colonies." The data he sent showed ancient cave paintings from Earth, carved stones from Mars colonies, and artifacts recovered from generation ships that had carried humanity to the stars. In each case, primitive versions of the same symbol appeared, always, associated with the oldest human settlements and stories. "What are you saying, Colonel?" Jihi asked, though she suspected she already knew. "These ships aren't alien, Captain. They're human, ancient human, from a civilization that existed long before our recorded history." The implications hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. For centuries, humanity had been considered one of the younger species in the galaxy. Other races had looked down on them as primitive newcomers who barely understood faster-than-light travel. The Vorthak called them soft-skinned children, while the Zephyrians dismissed human minds as crude and unrefined. Yet here was evidence that humanity's ancestors had built vessels that made current galactic technology look like stone tools. These weren't just ships, but mobile worlds, each one a testament to engineering capabilities that had been lost to time. News of the discovery spread through human space like wildfire. On Earth, crowds gathered around public screens watching as ancient human vessels continued to emerge across the galaxy. Some wept with pride, others trembled with fear at what their awakening might mean. The alien governments that had dismissed humanity suddenly found themselves reconsidering every interaction they'd had with the species they'd underestimated. If these were truly human ships, then what else had they gotten wrong about Earth's children? As reports continued flooding in, one thing became clear: the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. Dr. Song Mirai's hands trembled as she connected her neural interface to the ancient data core. The massive chamber around her hummed with energy that had been contained for millions of years, its walls covered in symbols that seemed to shift and move in her peripheral vision. 3 weeks had passed since the first ship awakened, and her team had finally gained access to the vessel's deepest archives. "Are you sure about this, Doctor?" asked her assistant, Engineer Kim Dong-hyun, as he monitored the connection from his portable workstation. "These systems are older than human civilization. We have no idea what kind of security protocols they might have." Mirai nodded grimly and activated the interface. Immediately, her mind was flooded with images and data that made her gasp inside her environmental suit. The information wasn't just stored as files or databases, but as living memories embedded in quantum crystals that pulsed with their own inner light. What she saw changed everything. She thought she knew about humanity's past. The records showed an ancient human empire that had spread across the galaxy millions of years ago. Their cities floated between stars, their technology so advanced it seemed like magic. But their golden age had ended when something terrible emerged from the spaces between dimensions, a hungry darkness that consumed everything it touched. "Captain Nam Seonwoo, you need to get down here immediately," she transmitted to the ship's commander, her voice barely steady. "What I'm seeing in these records, it changes everything." Captain Nam Seonwoo arrived within minutes, accompanied by Dr. Shin Yuna and a security team. The chamber they entered was vast enough to hold a small city, its ceiling disappearing into darkness above them. Crystalline data cores lined the walls like frozen stars, each one containing the memories of humanity's forgotten past. "Show me what you found," Nam Seonwoo said, his military bearing unable to hide the concern in his voice. Mirai activated the holographic display system, and suddenly the chamber filled with images of cosmic horror. They watched as star systems were consumed by writhing darkness, as entire civilizations screamed into the void before being devoured completely. The entity responsible moved through space like a living nightmare, its tendrils reaching across light years to drag worlds into dimensional rifts. "The ancient records call it the void hunger," Mirai explained, her voice echoing in the massive chamber. "It's not from our universe. It exists in the spaces between realities, feeding on the energy of living things. When it first appeared, it consumed 12 star systems in a single month." Dr. Shin Yuna studied the tactical displays with growing understanding and dread. These ships weren't built for exploration or conquest, she realized. They're prisons. The holographic records continued, showing how humanity's greatest minds had worked desperately to find a solution. They couldn't destroy the void hunger completely, but they could contain it. The planet-sized vessels were the result of their efforts. Massive containment facilities disguised as warships, each one designed to hold a fragment of the entity that threatened all life in the galaxy. "Look at this section," Nam Seonwoo said, pointing to readouts that showed the ship's internal structure. Each vessel contained a core chamber surrounded by layers of containment fields, energy barriers, and quantum locks. At the center of each prison sat a piece of living darkness, held in check by technology that pushed the limits of what was possible. But maintaining these prisons required a terrible sacrifice. The containment systems needed constant monitoring and adjustment, work that could only be done by living minds interfaced directly with the ship's neural networks. The ancient humans had known that someone would need to stay behind and watch over these cosmic jails forever. They volunteered, Mireille whispered as she accessed personnel records. Hundreds of thousands of them volunteered to enter stasis and maintain the containment fields. They knew they would never wake up, never see their families again, never return to the lives they'd left behind. The records showed the faces of these heroes, scientists, engineers, soldiers, and civilians who had given up everything to protect a galaxy that would forget they ever existed. Each ship carried skeleton crews in cryogenic sleep, their bodies preserved in chambers deep within the vessel's hearts, their minds connected to the containment systems through neural links that would keep them aware and vigilant for eternity. "For millions of years they've been standing guard," Dr. Shin Yuna said, her voice filled with awe and sadness. While civilizations rose and fell, while new species evolved and spread across the stars, these humans remained at their posts, keeping cosmic annihilation locked away. Captain Nam Seonwoo studied the status displays with growing alarm. The containment fields were stable for now, but they showed signs of degradation that had accumulated over eons. How long can these systems last without maintenance? Mireille's analysis painted a grim picture. The quantum locks are failing gradually. The stasis chambers are breaking down. Some of the crew members have been dead for thousands of years, but their neural patterns are still interfaced with the ship's systems, running on nothing but quantum echoes of their consciousness. As they explored deeper into the ship's records, they discovered the full scope of humanity's ancient sacrifice. Dozens of vessels scattered throughout the galaxy, each one containing a fragment of the void hunger, each one maintained by crews who had chosen eternal imprisonment to save everything they loved. The galaxy owed its existence to humans who had been forgotten by history, standing silent watch in the darkness between stars. But now their vigil was ending, and the question remained, who would take their place when the ancient guardians finally failed? Engineer Oh Hyun-woo wiped sweat from his forehead as alarms blared throughout the ancient vessel's engineering section. For 3 days straight, he had been crawling through maintenance tunnels that hadn't been accessed in millions of years, desperately trying to understand systems that made current human technology look like children's toys. The quantum containment. "Grid is failing on levels 7 through 12, he reported into his communicator, his voice echoing through the massive chamber around him. Energy conduits as thick as subway tunnels snaked overhead, their surfaces crackling with power that could vaporize an entire city block. We're looking at complete system failure within hours, not days." Across the galaxy, similar reports were coming in from every awakened vessel. The Vorthak Empire had attempted to board one of the ships near their territory, only to watch their assault troops dissolve into atoms when they tried to breach the hull. The Zephyrian Collective's psychic probes had been repelled so violently that 3 of their crystal ships had their crews knocked unconscious. Even the machine intelligence of the Nexus found their advanced robots shutting down completely when they approached the ancient vessels, as if the ships themselves rejected any non-human presence. Dr. Kim Ji-won stood in the neural interface chamber of the flagship, staring at the connection ports with growing dread. Her team had spent weeks trying to understand how the ancient crews had operated these massive prisons, and the truth they'd discovered was more terrible than anyone had imagined. "The genetic locks are absolute," she explained to the Emergency Council gathering via hologram from across human space. "These ships were designed so that only humans with the original bloodline markers could interface with their systems. It's..." Not just about DNA compatibility, it's about neural patterns that have been passed down through our species for millions of years. Admiral Kwon Tae-hyun listened from his command ship orbiting Earth, his weathered face grim as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The ancient vessels were scattered throughout known space, each one showing signs of critical system failure. But attempts by alien governments to claim or destroy them had resulted in disaster after disaster. "What about the original crews?" asked General Park Min-ji from the Mars Defense Station. "Can we revive them to help us understand these systems?" Ji-won's face went pale. "We tried that on the vessel near Alpha Centauri. When Dr. Lee Young-ho attempted to revive one of the stasis chambers, the occupant woke up for approximately 43 seconds before their body crumbled to dust." Millions of years in stasis had preserved their consciousness, but their physical forms couldn't survive exposure to normal time flow. The implications hung heavy in the air. Humanity's ancient guardians were dying, even as they were needed most. And the terrible burden they had carried was falling to their descendants who barely understood the technology involved. Then came the news everyone had been dreading. "Admiral, we have a containment breach near the Rigel system," reported Captain Yoon Ji-hye, her voice tight with controlled panic. "The prison ship designated Sentinel-7 has suffered complete containment failure. Something is coming out, the holographic display filled with images from the disaster site. The ancient vessel, larger than Earth's moon, hung in space with its hull split open like a cracked egg. From the breach emerged something that defied description, a writhing mass of darkness that seemed to bend space around itself. This was humanity's first glimpse of the void hunger in millions of years. The entity's hunger was immediate and terrible. A nearby asteroid field simply ceased to exist as the creature's tendrils reached out, consuming matter and energy alike. The space around it warped and twisted, creating gravitational anomalies that pulled nearby debris into its growing mass. "All ships, maintain distance," Admiral Kwon Tae-hyun ordered. But it was too late for some. A Vorthak patrol fleet that had been investigating the area was caught in the entity's influence. The reptilian warriors' screams filled the communication channels as their vessels were dragged into dimensional rifts, disappearing into spaces between realities. Oh Hyun-woo watched the disaster unfold from his position deep within another ancient vessel, his hands working frantically to stabilize failing containment fields. "Admiral, the quantum resonance from the breach is affecting all the other ships. If one more prison fails, it could trigger a cascade effect. The choice facing humanity was impossible. They could attempt to revive more of the ancient crews, watching their ancestors crumble to dust, while gaining precious minutes of knowledge about the containment systems, or they could volunteer to take their place, interfacing with technology they barely understood, to become the new guardians of cosmic horror." "How many volunteers would we need?" Admiral Kwon Tae-hyun asked, though he already suspected the answer would be devastating. Dr. Kim Ji-won's calculations were grim. "Each ship requires a minimum crew of 50,000 to maintain proper containment. We have 47 active vessels. That's over 2 million people who would need to enter permanent stasis, connected to neural networks that will keep them conscious, but trapped within the ship's systems forever." The silence that followed was deafening. Across human space, families huddled around communication screens, understanding that their species faced the same choice their ancestors had made millions of years ago. They could sacrifice themselves to save the galaxy, or watch as cosmic horror consumed everything they loved. Near Rigel, the void hunger continued to grow, its tendrils reaching toward inhabited systems where billions of lives hung in the balance. Time was running out, and humanity had to decide who would pay the price for their ancestors' legacy. Dr. Kim Ji-won stood before the galaxy's largest communication array, her hands steady despite the weight of what she was about to announce. Behind, her holographic displays showed the spreading chaos as more containment breaches occurred across known space. The void hunger was breaking free in 17 different locations, its tendrils of darkness consuming entire star systems. "Citizens of Earth and all human colonies," she began, her voice carrying across light years to reach every human settlement in the galaxy. "Today, you learn the truth about who we really are. We are not newcomers to the stars. We are the children of the galaxy's greatest heroes, inheritors of a sacrifice so profound that it has protected all life for millions of years. On Earth, crowds gathered in city squares watching the transmission on massive screens. In the outer colonies, families huddled around communication terminals, children asking questions their parents couldn't answer. The truth was almost too large to comprehend. Humanity's ancestors had built the galaxy's greatest fleet, not for conquest but for protection. Our ancient family built these ships as prisons for cosmic horror, G1 continued. For countless generations, volunteers have stood guard in the darkness, keeping annihilation locked away. Now their vigil is ending, and the choice falls to us. Will we take their place? The response was immediate and overwhelming. Colonel Han Seojun was the first to volunteer, stepping forward from his position at the Mars Military Academy. Within hours, his example inspired thousands more. Entire families volunteered together, understanding that this wasn't just about duty, but about love for everything they held dear. "I won't let my children inherit a dead galaxy," announced Captain Park Yujin as she led her crew aboard the ancient vessel, designated Guardian Prime. Around her, volunteers from across human space boarded transport ships, heading for the awakened giants that waited in the darkness between stars. The boarding process was unlike anything in human history. As the volunteers entered the ancient vessels, ghostly neural interfaces activated around them. Holographic projections of the original crews appeared, their faces worn by millions of years of vigilant service, yet still filled with determination. "Welcome, children of our children," whispered the ghost of an ancient captain as he guided Colonel Han Seojun through the ship's neural connection chamber. "We have waited so long to pass this burden to worthy hands." The process was both beautiful and terrifying. As each volunteer connected to the ship's neural network, they could feel the vast consciousness of the vessel awakening around them. The ancient technology merged with their minds, showing them how to maintain the containment fields, how to keep the cosmic horror locked away. Captain Lee Minseo took command of the flagship as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Void. Hunger had broken free from 7 more prison ships, its fragments beginning to merge and grow stronger. Time was running out. "All vessels, this is Flagship Eternal Watch," she announced across the fleet communications. "Prepare for full activation of all systems. We're going to finish what our ancestors started." The sight that followed would be remembered for generations. Across the galaxy, the planet-sized vessels began emerging from their hiding places. Ships that had been buried in asteroid fields for eons broke free, shaking off millions of years of cosmic debris. Others rose from planetary cores, splitting moons apart as they ascended to take their positions. The weapon systems that charged for the first time in millions of years made the galaxy's current military technology look like toys. Energy cannons the size of skyscrapers hummed to life, their power cores drawing energy from the very fabric of space itself. Defensive barriers flickered into existence around each vessel, creating shields that could withstand the destruction of entire solar systems. But the most impressive sight was the coordination. Under Dr. Park So-hee's command from the flagship's strategic center, 47 massive vessels moved as one. They formed a perfect sphere around the Rigel system, where the largest concentration of void hunger had gathered. "All ships report. Ready for the final protocol," announced engineer Ryu Jinsu from his position deep within Guardian Prime's core systems. "The containment matrix is stable. We can begin." The battle that followed wasn't fought with conventional weapons. The Void. Hunger writhed and twisted as the planet ships activated containment fields that reached across space itself. Reality bent and warped as cosmic forces clashed, the ancient human technology proving more than equal to the task of containing extra-dimensional horror. Across the galaxy, alien civilizations watched in stunned silence. The Vorthak Empire's greatest generals studied tactical displays, showing coordination beyond their understanding. The Zephyrian Collective felt the psychic emanations of millions of human minds working in perfect harmony. Even the machine intelligence of the Nexus calculated probabilities and found their estimations of human capability completely inadequate. "Containment is holding on all vessels," reported Captain Lee Min-seo as the last fragments of void hunger were pulled back into their quantum prisons. The threat has been neutralized, but victory came with its price. Throughout the fleet, the new Guardians settled into their eternal watch. They would remain connected to the ship's neural networks, their consciousness merged with ancient technology, standing guard against cosmic horror for as long as civilization existed. Dr. Kim Ji-won made one final transmission from Earth. Today, humanity has taken its place among the stars, not as conquerors but as protectors. Our children sleep in chambers of crystal and light, dreaming dreams that keep the galaxy safe. The silent fleet had new guardians, and the universe finally understood what humanity truly was. Not a young species reaching for greatness, but the inheritors of the galaxy's most sacred duty, willing to sacrifice everything for the protection of all life. The end.